guest. This is going to be so much fun. It is so good to be back in the studio again. And I told you I had a treat for you this week. It's going to get a little, how should we say? It might get a little steamy in here. I mean, you might want to open a window. Just be ready. We're going to be having some sensual conversation. I am here with I'm not going to say CEO. I'm going to go with the CHO of In Pleasure We Trust. For those who want to know what CHO is, that's the Chief Hedonist Officer. Did I say that right? Yeah, I think I did. Miss Kalah Hill, how are you today?
I am well. How are you doing, Johan?
I'm doing amazing. You know, we're rocking and rolling in season 3, and we're having a lot of fun, lots of incredible guests like yourself. And I'm really just happy that you could take some time to share some space with us and help us all just get a little bit closer to ourselves. This is going to be a little bit different episode. I'm just want to let y'all know. Just hold on, okay? You just be ready. I mean, we're going to talk about money. Money's going to be a part of it, but we're going to talk about some other things. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, Kalah. There's been studies that have been done that talk about people and fearful conversations that are very tough to have. And I used to use this statistic a lot when I went into, teaching money in school systems or wherever it was. And the statistic is that the three toughest things for parents to talk about with kids or for two adults to talk about with each other, as far as the level of discomfort, are death, sex, and money. So we're not going to talk about death that much. But with that, please, why don't you share with the people a little bit about In Pleasure We Trust?
Yeah. In Pleasure We Trust is really, to me, a shifting and a reclamation of pleasure. So like you mentioned, people have a hard time speaking about sex, for example. But I think more so people have a hard time with intimacy and closeness and feeling that depth of satisfaction in their life. And so to me, In Pleasure We Trust is a reclamation of our pleasure and an expansion of our capacity to be with pleasurable experience. Now, that could be sexual, but it can also be an infinite possibility of other pleasures that come online for your enjoyment. So to me, it's really a movement about recrafting and rewriting the dialogue and storyline and relationship to pleasure. And I see it as a form of liberation. That's why I call myself a freedom doula. And I see myself as using pleasure as the gateway to our liberation. It's kind of the gist of what I do.
I love it. It's funny how you mentioned the idea of rewriting your relationship that you have with pleasure and a relationship with yourself, because that's what we talk about at the Money Script, is rewriting your money script, redefining the relationship that you have with money. And I'm sure part of the work that you do with individuals has a lot to do with letting go of past habits and things that are mental blocks that get in the way of being able to enjoy pleasure. Am I right?
Yes, definitely. And that's why I think, we get each other because we understand each other's missions. And also, I think it's interesting too, because there is a death component to this work as well, because there's a dying of an old way.
Mm.
With every birth, there's a death. So we are birthing anew and we are releasing an old. So there's a letting go of an old way of relating to your pleasure and birthing a new way of relationship with it. As a natural born hedonist, like you mentioned before.
Chief Hedonist in Charge, CHO.
To me, it was really about getting off of the dopamine and sinking into the serotonin and oxytocin. So the longer standing, longer term regenerative pleasure, as opposed to the quick fix, instant gratification type of pleasure, and reframing my relationship with my pleasurable hedonistic ways and claiming them as my nature, right? Like we are hardwired for pleasure. And I don't think that that's by coincidence. That's an evolutionary thing that has come online. And Adrienne Marie Brown, the author of Pleasure Activism, talks about this a lot in her work, how it's like, well, we've inherited this pleasure, and I call it our pleasure. We've been entrusted with pleasure. It's our pleasure trust. So in pleasure we trust, right? It's our inheritance. And so how are we working with our pleasure inheritance? How are we developing it? How are we investing in it? How are we creating from the wealth of pleasure that has been given to us? So redirecting, the term pleasure, redirecting the term hedonist into one of fruitful abundance and wealth.
Hedonism does have a lot of negative connotation associated with it.
And so does pleasure.
And so does money. I mean, these things that just line up so well because we, as you mentioned, we create these stories in our mind that we're not supposed to be pleasured, or we're not supposed to be wealthy, or we're not supposed to live in a manner that's not paycheck to paycheck. And we feel the conversations of, the love of money is a sin, or money is the root of evil, or things in that space. And I hear those same things that you're saying when it comes to the idea of pleasure and how you see yourself, how you accept yourself, how you engage with your partner and with the rest of the world for that matter. And not and removing the layer of shame that may be associated with it. So how did you get into this line of work? Because if I remember correctly, you this is not what you went to college for.
No. So I did a master's degree in marine biology.
Okay, this
Um,
is what far away from marine biology.
it seems far away, but it's actually useful having a foundation in science and in the natural sciences.
Okay, fair. Okay, fair.
It does help me understand the nature and the ecosystem. Like from an ecosystem perspective, I can understand the nature of our pleasure from that lens of my biology training. So it is useful in some ways, and also just was useful for me at the time. That time in my life, I was young. I needed to get out of my small town and I went to Boston for undergrad, and then I went to University of Miami for graduate school. So I was, getting to explore and expand. And so it was a very interesting path. And then after graduate school, I spent a long time, about 5 years, looking and searching for a job in marine conservation. And to no avail, I did not end up getting a full-time position anywhere. And I ended up bartending actually during that time. And I was, just kind of hustling. I had like a million different jobs. I was bartending, I was dog walking, I was teaching yoga, babysitting. And then
All the things marine biologists do. Yeah, I hear you.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, maybe we'll get into that conversation in a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think the education system in the United States is an interesting topic. So, yeah, so I graduated and I was not able to use my degree. And then I was introduced to postpartum doula work at some point along the way. And it was the first time I heard the word doula.
Mm.
I had no idea what a doula was. This was about 8 years ago. And something about it like hit my body like when I heard that word. It's the first time that I felt a response, an embodied response to a work of service. And I was like, I should probably pay attention to this. So I started to really follow more bodily cues. Like I used to be very in my head, like very cognitive, very intellectual. And so I would follow like logic most of the time. And that didn't work for me. And so I thought, what would happen if I started following something that was more sensorial? And so that was about, 8 to 7 years ago when I started that journey, and I started just participate and do trainings that really felt good in my body. And that's what's honestly led me to this place. I moved to Costa Rica 4 years ago. I had a massive transition there. That was all because my body said yes to Costa Rica. it was time for me to take a leap. And my business in Pleasure Trust was birthed 4 years ago when I moved down here because I had said yes to a big reclamation of my pleasure and enjoyment in lifestyle choice. And I felt ready to teach.
Beautiful. So a lot to unpack there, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you referencing back to at the top of the show before you hopped on. I was speaking of the student loan crisis here in the United States, and like you said, it is a very interesting system that we've built where we encourage our children to, graduate from high school and to enter into college, and in some cases borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars, because we're told we have to go to it's not we have to, if you want to have a successful career, you get to go to the best colleges and get advanced degrees, etc., or else you won't have success, or else you'll be relegated to bartending and dog walking. And I've met a lot of people in my many years, and the ones that tend to hurt my heart the most are the teachers that will get a bachelor's and a master's degree, sometimes from a small town, sometimes from, or not necessarily that they have to be the size of the town, but from a social economic background where there's not a lot of financial literacy, where there wasn't a lot of saving for college. But again, they get this thought in their mind, well, I want to give back. I want to be a teacher. So I'm going to go borrow $200,000 so I can teach, and then not fully understand the the impact that borrowing that much money is going to have on the rest of their financial life when they enter into a career where they're making middle class income. They got to have a high class education and a middle class income. So, and like I said, my heart would pour out to them. So I'm excited that the government is attempting to try to fix that and give some opportunities for people. But we've also got to educate our youth on ways to get money for school. There's so many scholarships that just aren't awarded because they didn't have enough applicants. And shout out to the work that Scholly is doing. I know that's a great app. I've referred it to clients where you can, no matter what level you're in your college, you can apply for multiple scholarships through an app. So that's one to look into. And there's many others, but you're gonna have to do a little work in order to do that. May I ask the total cost of your education? Are you comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, sure. The total, I mean, do you want to know the total, like the total of my student loan balance today or the total of my balance when I walked out of graduate school?
Let's do both because I'm interested in the dichotomy between the two numbers.
Yeah. So when I walked out of graduate school, my balance was around $185,000. Today, with on time minimum payments, my balance is $325,000.
Hold on, excuse me. I need a restroom break.
Yeah.
Okay,
Me too.
so wait, hold. I need my calculator. So let me.
Yeah.
I have a pen. I got to write this down. This isn't working for me. Okay, so
Mhm.
you graduated with 185,000 as a future marine biologist. Okay,
Yes.
and what's the starting salary for back then? Do you know what were you being offered
Yeah.
for
So
salaries?
about 35, 40.
35, 40. Okay, so 35 to 40,000. Okay. And so then with on time minimum payments, I mean, it's tough. Let's say you did get the marine biology job at 35 to 40,000. I mean, minimum payments won't even cover the interest. I mean, the interest alone on $185,000 has got to be somewhere in the area of, I mean, $400 or $500 a month just for the interest. Let me guess, your
Yeah.
minimum payment was less than the interest
Yes, it was.
because your income was so low. Oh, that makes sense. That was sarcasm for those that didn't feel the layer that came on real thick there. It makes no fucking sense. I'm just gonna say it. It doesn't make any fucking sense. And now, years later, how many years later? Was it a decade later?
Yeah, it's been, let's see, I graduated in Yeah, it's about 11 years now.
11 years later, your balance with on-time payments is 300
325.
325,000. Okay, so if I carry the 1, and let's see, 12 minus 4 is 4. 12 minus 8 is 4. I got it, you guys. 2, 1. So you've been penalized with $140,000 in interest over the last 11 years. So your cost of doing what the American dream is, wow, almost $12,000 a year. That is okay. So I said it at the top of the show. I'm gonna say it again. If you were one of these individuals that has a student loan, the public student loan forgiveness program, look into it. You may qualify for it. Really look into it. And they just reopened it. They're gonna analyze anyone that has federal student loans since 2007. You can reapply. Okay, so to go and sit down and write down every single job that you had and fill out that paperwork and see if you are able to get some of your student loans forgiven. Also, if you are really drowning in student loans, look for other options, debt consolidation options, refinancing options. Even if, I mean, if there's nothing else, to even maybe sit and speak with an attorney about your options of getting out of some of that debt because that is the American way. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm gonna calm down. I need to get
I
back
know.
centered. Um,
Yeah.
I'm surprised because you were calmer than I was in all this, but you've been living it for so long, and I think you've been doing a lot of self work, so that probably has a lot to do with it. I'd like to know, and this is something we ask on every show to all of our guests. I'd like to know about some of or one of your first memories of money.
Mm.
And I know you've given this some thought in the past because we've had a conversation about it. But I find that sometimes we when asked the question again, maybe something a little different comes up, or the memory gets a little bit deeper. But share with the guests one of your first encounters or memories of money.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna share something a little different because I've shared a couple of stories with you, but one that just came to mind as you asked this time. I remember I made jewelry. I had this like bedazzled, I don't know, it's like some sort of bedazzled jewelry making kit. And I must have been, I don't know, like 9 years old, maybe 8 or 9 years old. I made this jewelry and I set up a little stand outside my house in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't understand what I thought, how much foot traffic I was going to get, but this was like in the middle of like upstate New York, in the country. So I set up this little stand right outside, like on the road, on the end of my driveway, with all my jewelry. And I was so proud that I was going to sell this jewelry. And I mean, it was like, now I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this jewelry was not, I wouldn't buy this jewelry, but I put it out there. And I think I had like two sales, something like that. And I was there all day long. And and my friends came over, they were my friends on the block, they came over to hang out with me while I was doing this. And we had a good time. And they're like, this is so different. Like, usually people do lemonade. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm doing jewelry. You know what I mean? Like, I was very adamant about, like, this is not a lemonade stand, you know? And I was very confident, like super confident. And it's funny to think about that now, because I'm the same way now too. I have like very strong positive confirmation bias in my psyche. And I'm like, yeah, 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 like, it's gonna be great. Like, I always just think like everything, and that was the same like with my student loans and with school and all of that decade, of like really trying to find my way. I'm like, thank God for that perception and attitude towards life of just like, everything will work out, it will be fine. Like, I have this almost um, stubbornness about it. It can get me in trouble in different contexts, but it also is like a great service. I think I made like $5 or $7 or something. It wasn't that much
Oh, no,
money, but
you were
I was,
women no, you were winning. You had
yeah.
no Instagram advertising, you didn't have any billboards, You had nothing. You said, "No, I'm just gonna put my store right here," and you were under the old guise of, "If I build it, they will come." And
Yes.
and a few did, and a few did, but you know what you did though, what the other kids did not, was having the courage to try something with that stubbornness, with that positivity of saying, "No, it's going to work." And of course, in
Mhm.
hindsight, you look back, you're like, "Okay, maybe I could have thought out some of my designs a little bit better. Maybe I could have put some flyers on doors or something." I mean, you can, but that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, and you're living that right now. I mean, you basically did the same thing again with In Pleasure We Trust. You went to another country and you built your shop. Now, fortunately, you had Instagram and Facebook and some of those tools to help you this time, but still, you just put your shop up and said, "All right,
Yep.
who wants to be my first client?" And you got your first client, and you learned some things, and then you got your second client, and third client, and fourth client, and now here you are. I mean, we'll look up, and you'll be decades into this with thousands of hours of content and thousands of pages of workbooks and thousands of hours of giving presentations to individuals, whether in groups or in individually, and
Mm,
you'll have a business model that someone's going to try to duplicate if they haven't already.
mm.
So I think that's an incredible money memory, and I love how we hear that sometimes from our guests of when they were children when they tried to start their first business, and I think that's the real American way, not all this college stuff. No, as I speak to you with my college T-shirt on, but I mean, it has its purpose, it has its place, but I do think that America's got to find a different way to do it because we're just creating a or generations of debt and enslavement also to the obligations and people feel trapped and it can cause there can be so many side effects of having hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and knowing that every time you make your payment the balance gets bigger like that
Yeah.
psychologically does not do well for anyone that thinks they even understand math. Because even me, I had to write that down, like, "Wait a minute, did I not carry the 3? I'm confused." So
Yeah, it's definitely not helpful, but I do think there's some structural components to the education system in the states that are of benefit to me, in terms of, like, for example, like data collection and then presentation. So that was like the majority of my graduate work
mhm,
was collect data, present data. And so now that's like so much of what I do, especially in my group teachings and my like classrooms and my coursework, is I collect pleasure data and I present it in the classroom. And it's very experiential and it's very, um, you know, like, can we test something out and see what happens? And my science background really allowed me to um, understand the processes within that kind of structure. So, yeah, there's pros and cons, but definitely psychologically, it feels like I'm trying to break up with a narcissist. That's what I say all the time.
good luck.
This is really hard.
Yes, indeed, indeed. So tell us what new projects does In Pleasure We Trust have on the horizon?
Yeah, so actually, in the new year in 2022, we're going to be starting In Pleasure We Trust, which is a 6-week workshop. It starts January 11th. It's really interesting because it's actually all about building a pleasure portfolio. So it's kind of a
Ooh,
riff off of building a financial portfolio. We have pleasure investment, pleasure bonds, we have pleasure trusts, we have pleasure inheritance. And so we'll be going through all of those aspects of pleasure as if we're building a pleasure portfolio for kind of a new economic paradigm. In Pleasure We Trust is definitely a riff off of, In God We Trust, so it's a statement of currency. It's a statement of wealth building and access that the thing I love about pleasure is that it's pretty accessible and it's innate to your being. So you don't have to necessarily go out and get it. That's the dopamine that we're trying to actually get off of. So instead of it being this like instant gratification, compulsory, consumerist model of pleasure, we're taking pleasure, we're re-scripting it into this sustainable, regenerative, wealth building structure with pleasure. So it's really fun. And I hope my intention really is that everyone leaves the course feeling like they are building their pleasure capital as well as building their pleasure generational wealth through
Ooh.
pleasure. That's the intention of the course.
So on our next show, we're gonna actually be speaking with an attorney. I could just hear her now saying, "Oh, we're gonna trademark that, trademark that, trademark that." So just make sure everyone knows you heard it here first. The pleasure in pleasure we trust, diversification and investment portfolio. I love it. So how can people find you, or what if they want to sign up for your course?
Yeah, so I'm excited to give a little promo code
Oh,
uh,
we
for
hey
money
y'all, we getting a
script.
promo code. We getting a promo code, y'all. All right. So pause this, pull over, so you can write it down, okay, or something. Somebody grab a pen, write this down.
Yeah, for money script listeners, I really wanted to offer something because I love you and I love the work you do. And I'm sure everyone who taps into this frequency with you is someone that I would love to invite into this space for this group work. So you can find out more about the course on my website in pleasurewetrust.com, as well as you can follow me on Instagram. Instagram is my name, so it's at Kalah.hill. And then promo code. So for 10% off, so 10% off 555. The course is 555. So you'll get it for 500. The promo code is MoneyScript10.
Money script 10. All right, we're gonna put that
It's
in the show
really, it's
notes.
not anything super clever.
No, no, that is no. Hey, money script 10, but it's not money script 20. It's not money script 8. It's money script 10, and that's 10 or TEN.
10.
10 money script 10. Pop that in to get your 10% off, and go build that pleasure portfolio. Did I say that right? Is it the
Yes.
pleasure portfolio? See, I can see it now. You're gonna have all this stuff trademarked. I'm not gonna be able to say it without your permission. It's gonna be incredible. But I love the concept. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, the and you've actually reiterated several times the dopamine effect that we seek. It happens with money and with sex. Actually, for those of you that have read Napoleon Hill's book Think and Grow Rich, he did a whole chapter on sex and how it's related to your ability to be comfortable with getting money and creating more money and executing ideas and your confidence, etc. So, Kayla, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today, and I am looking forward to having you back on the show again on another season. And again, you guys go check out inpleasurewetrust.com. She's got lots of wonderful information there. You can also even hire her individually as your own pleasure coach. Did I say that right? Pleasure coach?
Yes.
Or no,
Yes.
Freedom Doula. Excuse me,
Freedom
Freedom
Doula.
Doula. So check that out, and of course, join us on some other episodes. Like I said, we'll be back, and I believe it's next. I think we have an attorney next week. I don't know. There's a lot of great things. I told you guys, season 3, I'm coming with the fire. I've got my good friend Desarte coming up. I was just on his podcast not too long ago, so that's fire. So you have to check that out too. But for now, we're gonna say thank you again to Kayla for joining us on the Money Script podcast, and we see you guys next week.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Script podcast. Be sure to check out our other episodes, subscribe, follow, and give us 5 stars. Continue to send your financial questions on Twitter or Instagram at the Money Script. Go to moneyscriptwealth.com and schedule your complimentary consultation to discuss your specific goals and concerns. Financial advisory and investment management services are offered by Money Script Wealth Management PLLC, a registered investment advisory firm registered in the state of Texas and California and other states where exempt. The Money Script LLC and the Money Script Wealth Management PLLC and guests of the episode may have interest in the investments mentioned today. The opinions and views are expressed here are for informational purposes only. This material is educational in nature and should not be deemed as a solicitation for any specific product or service. All investments involve risk and a significant loss of principal. The Money Script nor Money Script Wealth Management offer tax or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney for specific advice about your situation. Until next time.